Alright, hello everyone, this is John, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to restructure a dataset into long form using R. And what I mean by long form is that in a typical dataset you would usually have participants or individuals representing one row representing each participant. But in this case we're going to put it into long form, so each participant would represent multiple rows at a time. This is usually an approach that is taken when conducting longitudinal data analysis, especially with repeated measures. So that's what we're going to do here is we're going to restructure the data set so really we can look at repeated measure designs in a longitudinal format. So I'm going to show you a step-by-step process on how to restructure your data set. And I'm going to copy and paste all this code into the description below so someone can just copy it and put it into their own script and really just manipulate the variables to fit their own data set. So let's begin. I'm going to quickly show the data set. So it is a repeated measures design, but right now it's organized in a more traditional format, a more traditional data set. We have job site, ID, 4 different training times, satisfaction with the trainer, and then overall job satisfaction. What we want to do is put all these training times 1, 2, 3, and 4 into one column. So instead of ID or individual one representing one column, or one row I should say, they're going to represent 4 rows for the 4 training times, and the 4 training times will all be compiled together to represent change in time, or really have a time variable which we could analyze. So I'm going to show you how to restructure it. First thing first is to go into step 1 here and upload the data set. So we're going to run this command. Right away the window pops up and here's the example data set which I just showed you. Keep in mind, especially when reading in a CSV file, that you have saved that Excel file as a CSV. Many times individuals just save the Excel file as a worksheet or workbook, and they have trouble entering or uploading that data set into R. If we want, we can look quickly at the headers of the data to make sure it's exactly the way it was in the Excel sheet, which it is. Job site, ID, our 4 training times, satisfaction with trainer, and overall job satisfaction. So now really the next step is to now begin restructuring the data set. So we're going to put all this information that is in rows into various columns now, or columns that are representing time. So I'll pretty much explain it. We're going to create a new data set, which is going to be called Data2, where the first one was called Data1. And we're going to create a new data frame, where ID is going to represent ID, job site is going to represent job site. But this is the more important caveat here. We're going to use the function stack. And what we're going to do is from data 1, we're going to select the 4 training times, training time 1 to training time 4, and we're going to stack all this information into one column for repeated measures design. After that, everything is business as usual. Satisfaction with trainer is going to become satisfaction with trainer, and overall job satisfaction is going to become overall job satisfaction. Let's run this command. Here we are. If we want, we can look at the head of data 2 to see what it looks like. And here it is. ID is ID, job site. Here are the values. And then we have training time. The values here is the values set for each time of that training, right? And here we have IND, which is training time 1. How about we make it a bit bigger so we could see what it looks like. Data 2. So here we are. All those training times, which were representing 4 columns before, are now all representing one column, which is now titled IND. Here you can see it right here. We have IND, and we have the values associated with each of those training times. So for example, individual ID 1 is there with a value of 5. We go down below. There they are again, individual 1 with a value of 7. We can go further below, a value of 8, etc. You can see how it's repeated all that individual's values all in one column under values. So that is good. We have that. That looks great. But now we can begin renaming some of the columns that have been automatically created through this new restructuring. Let's rename this column IND. It's not really a name that serves much purpose for us. So in step 3 here, we're going to rename this column, and we're going to call it training time. So under names data2 in column 4, we're going to change this to training time. So let's click that and run. So if we want, we could quickly once again look at the headers of data2 to see how that looks. And there we go. We have training time. Once again, we have training time here, which is great, but all the values underneath aren't really measurable values at this time. They're all the labels from the previous columns. So for each training time, we want to give it a value that represents a period of time that we can use to analyze within our data set. So in order to do that, we have to go to step 4 here. So we've already renamed the column. So step 4, we have to open library car. Make sure to have library car installed or be able to upload it, or else this recoding function will not work for this next step. So we can run library car. We can see it uploaded there. And now we're going to recode time into numeric values. So data2 training time, we're going to recode it. And for data2 training time, for training time 1, we're going to recode it as 0. For training time 2, we're going to recode it as 1. And for training time 3, we're going to recode it as 2. And training time 4, we're going to recode it as 3. The idea is, some people might be asking, why don't you just call time 1, 1, time 2, 2, time 3, 3, etc. Ideally, you want the intercept to be at baseline. So for a repeated measures design, if you were to put this value at 1 instead of 0, you've now created an intercept above 0 automatically. So to make sure your intercept is significantly different from 0, it's best to place it right at 0, particularly for a repeated measures design, because then you have an accurate baseline and you can now measure how much change does occur from 0. Because when you run any statistics program in a repeated measures, if this is already at 1, it's going to assume that it is significantly different than 0 automatically, which it might not be. So that's why we're calling time 1, 0, time 2, 1, time 3, 2, and time 4, 3. So let's run this now. And if we want, we could quickly look at the data set. And here we are. So here's our new column, training time. There's time 0, right? And there's time 1 right here, and then time 2, and then time 3. So that is pretty much how you restructure a data set into long form using R. If you want, actually there's this values section here. If you wanted to recode that, you could. All you would have to do is just copy and paste this code from above. Let's just paste it here. And we're manipulating code 3. So if we want to change that values, we could change it to training. Let's say that's the score they receive for that training period. So let's run that quickly. So we could change that as well. Let's look at the head of data2 quickly. So there you go, training score. So you have the job site, the training score, the training time, and all your other information. It's all within a longitudinal design, and it's all available in long format now that you can begin analyzing your data. If you wanted to save this data as a CSV file, it's very simple. Use step 5 here. Write the following code, write.csv, and then in brackets, you got to give it the name of the data set that's within R right now, which is data2. That's our long format. And all we're going to do is just rename this data set, dataset2, data2, let's call it long form. You don't need to call it data set, it doesn't make sense. And here we go. And then we could just run this last command, and now it's saved it. And if we quickly go over to this window here, you'll have to make sure it's in a directory you know where to find it. but you can see here it has saved this, and where it has saved this dataset file, the CSV file, is in my documents. So just make sure you know where the directory is. If not, you can always look here to see where that directory does exist. So that's how you recode, restructure a dataset in R into long format. I'm going to copy and paste all this information below into the descriptives so someone could easily just copy and paste it into their own script, and then really just change the variables to better suit your dataset or what exactly labels you are using. Thank you for watching. Much appreciated.